What is the greatest comeback to an insult you've ever heard? Joe Pine interviewing Frank Zappa. Joe, I guess your long hair makes you a woman. FC, I guess your wooden leg makes you a table. How does a dude named Pine have a wooden leg? What if it's mahogany or oak? Not even clever, but one of my favorite Zappa lines, because it's so outlandish, is may your shit come to life and kiss you on the face. During World War I, Switzerland had a tiny standing army, but they were very skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250k Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500k German troops. The Swiss said, shoot twice and go home. Switzerland is actually neutral now in part because they were such good fighters. Many European countries hired Swiss mercenaries to fight for them. At least, that's what I heard in a YouTube video. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back with, "That depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress." Imagine hitting someone with such a fire burn that people are discussing it 250 years later. My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother generally came out on top, as she was fierier. One time though, she was asking him to do a bunch of stuff, and he muttered, "If you'd lose some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him, and glowered, "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately." He replied, "You're going to cut off your foot?" Man, nobody bickers like old married couples bicker. They've had decades to perfect their craft. Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." Back in middle school I was at Walmart with a friend of mine looking for pants. Being a tomboy, I liked to wear baggy boys' pants, nor did I wear makeup. Another kid came up to me and snarkily asked PFFT, "What are you? A boy or a girl?" And without missing a beat I responded, "Why? Do you think I'm hot?" He just got flustered and walked away mumbling obscenities. This was the 90s, so the gender question actually was insulting to my 14-year-old brain. Not the greatest, but I still hold pride for my quick wit back then. Too bad that's all gone now. Saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day, and he says something along the lines of, "The first time I had sex it was terrible. The first time I had sex." And a woman chimes in with, "You mean yesterday?" Crowd laughs for a while, and while the comedian is waiting for them to calm down you can see the gears turn in his head. Once it gets down to basically a few chuckles, he just says, "Glad you remember," and the crowd just lost their shit. It was amazing. Okay, now we need the source of this clip. Why would you heckle a comedian? You just know that he'll come back and destroy you. I used to work with this like 70-year-old woman. She was our supervisor, and one day one of the ladies who worked with us told this old lady to kiss my ass, and the old lady replied, "Where do I start? You're so fat your crack goes all the way up your back." Gran, how many times do we have to tell you? We are not a crematorium. My family is a fan of Marcus Spot. You're all ass. I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she doesn't look like me. Savage. You deserve that. A guy makes fun of his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend also rubs his head and says, "Wow, you're right. That had to hurt." This is from the movie Mrs. Parker and the Vicious Circle. The movie is about a real-life person, legendary writer Dorothy Parker. If you like zinger insults, comebacks, and dark humor, she's your lady. Quiet guy in my art class got called queer bait. He replied with, "If I'm the bait then you're the catch of the day." My 10-year-old cousin was pushed aside by an older student at school who also felt the need to call him a gay child. My cousin told him not to get his hopes up. So it turns out you can catch the gay. One of my coworkers was cold calling customers, trying to get appointments to drum up business. One of them told him to go fuck his hand, and he responded with, "I've got that penciled in for 3. I should be done by 4 if you'd like to come in for an appointment then." The guy laughed his ass off, and ended up coming in for the appointment. Lamau at this wild ass telling random people to go fuck their own hand. I had a coworker, also in sales, also cold calling, a take no shit middle-aged woman. When people hung up on us, sometimes we'd call back and play dumb, often people would realize they were being rude. This is more business to business. Anyhow, this lady couldn't help herself, so she'd call back, feign the same polite friendliness, and say, "Hey, sorry, I think we were rudely disconnected." Winston Churchill, of course. Lady Nancy asked her, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea." Churchill, "Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." Winston, "You are drunk, disgustingly drunk." "Yes, madam, But you're fat. And when morning comes, I shall be sober. I was the one insulted, but not the one with the comeback. I was out with a coworker and her friends, and my buddy and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like pussy." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, that must be me. I just ate. It was amazing. Smooth. Goddamn." Alternatively, maybe you should be a bit more thorough in the shower then. You sure do talk a lot for never saying anything. In Mexico, we use the word cantinflear for that. It comes from a comedian with a long career from the 30s to the 80s named Cantinflas, and that was his shtick, talking too much but never saying anything. That's a Wizard of Oz joke. Dorothy asks the Scarecrow, "How can you talk if you haven't any brains?" To which he replies, "I don't know. But some people without any brains do an awful lot of talking." Not heard, but read. Easily the Spartans reply to Philip II of Macedon. As Philip II of Macedon was conquering Greek city-states left and right, Sparta was left alone. Philip had achieved a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. Philip sent a message to the Spartans saying, "If I invade Laconia you will be destroyed, never to rise again." The Spartans replied with one word, "If." This is actually where the word laconic came from. My grandma asked my cousin, who'd had lots of partners and 2 kids at this point, if she was ever going to get married. "Cousin, it's not the same nowadays. We don't buy cars without test driving them first." Grandma, "Yeah. But they don't let you put 100,000 miles on them either." Point goes to Granny. I've been called worse things by better people. For context, this was famously said by former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau when he found out Richard Nixon called him an asshole. I don't doubt that. A friend of mine was getting bitched at by these 2 identical twin girls in a class I had once. He replied with a troubling look on his face and said, "If you 2 are identical, how come only one of you are hot?" That dude played the long game as those 2 girls looked rather perplexed for the rest of the session. I have something similar. Have a group text made up of 5 people. It's called 3 of my favorite people. In high school, we congregated in our cliques around the benches. One friend is cracking his knuckles and did this fairly often. Another friend saw this and remarked, "You pop your hands a lot, you must jerk off a lot." The friend that popped his hands immediately looks at him and calmly says, "You pop your jaw a lot, you must suck dick a lot." Weirdly enough, no one laughed, we just all shrugged and took it as a logical explanation. It's been over 20 years and I still think about the logic. This comment just made me crack my knuckles. Context: John Oliver from HBO interviews Stephen Hawking, "May he rest in peace J.O., and there may be a universe where I am more intelligent than you? S.H., there may even be a universe where you are funny." I lost count of how many times I've seen that video and it still makes me laugh. The whole interview is just hilarious. Anything I've thought of more than an hour after the insult. The French have a phrase for this. Esprit d'escalier, or the spirit of the staircase. The witty retort you think of as you're leaving down the front steps. Well, the jerk store called and they are running out of you.